I'm Yacine Rezgui. I'm a professor of urban intelligence at Cardiff University. I'm the project coordinator and co-author of the Antifragility proposal. My role is to ensure alignment with our project vision and to provide scientific leadership across and between work packages. I've long been interested in the behavior of complex systems, in particular urban mobility within the built environment. It's quite fascinating and concerning at the same time to observe how a wide range of stresses, whether environmental, technological, or social, can disturb mobility patterns, including a simple social media message. And the interesting thing is that these cascading effects reveal the limitations of conventional resilience approaches and highlight the need for a new paradigm shift. This is Antifragility. So the project is inspired by this challenge, which is to move beyond simply absorbing shocks and instead designing mobility systems that have the capacity to learn, adapt, and improve through disruption while being aware of the ecosystem in which they exist and evolve. Each urban environment is different and evolves within its own local ecosystem, whether it's regulated at a much wider scale, at the scale of a district, of a city, of a region, of a country, or even at a wider scale. So our biggest challenge is to understand the equilibrium of these complex urban systems in a way that enables us to sense and characterize any deviation from that equilibrium and apply the appropriate socio-technical, short-term and sometimes long-term interventions to restore a suitable level of balance. In that respect, then, the anti-fragile behavior of an urban system stems from its ability to become immune to and strengthened by the stressor or stressors that cause the deviation. For that, our concept of equilibrium model is essential, and we rely on a wide range of existing static as well as dynamic data sources to continuously calibrate and refine our understanding of complex urban systems with a focus on mobility. Then we use these calibrated models to monitor, characterize, predict, and inform decision-making to continuously ensure that our urban mobility performs in an optimal way within the ecosystem in which they evolve and within well understood and managed conditions. Resilience is about the ability of a system to absorb a shock, adapt, and recover essential functions. Antifragility goes beyond that. I often use the concept of homeostasis as an analogy. The human body is a good example of homeostasis. The human body responds to stresses such as viral infections by activating adaptive biological mechanisms that help it regain balance. So in many cases, it goes a step further. Our human body goes a step further in that it develops immunity to the virus that caused the infection, so that if the same virus returns, the body can recognize it and respond more effectively. So in the same way, an anti-fragile urban mobility system should not simply return to its previous state after disruption, but learn from the stressors that have affected it and improve its capacity to deal with similar stresses in the future in case whenever they occur. So for mobility, it is a shift from restoring the status quo to building a system that continuously learns by combining real-time monitoring, structured event understanding, scenario testing, and social evaluation of what's acceptable and fair by citizens. We're quite proud to report a number of achievements. So these take the form of deliverables that we lead into milestones. So in this first year, we have focused on laying solid foundations and making the collaboration within the consortium real and effective. I'd like to report 3 key deliverables that we have produced to date. So the first one involves completing our citizen assemblies in Bratislava, Larissa, and Thessaloniki. These citizen assemblies are essential as we are moving away from a situation where citizens are the recipients of a top-down management regime or governance regime to a situation where citizens are promoted into active agents that can inform and influence the mobility system and wider urban life. Our second milestone, I'm proud to be reporting, relates to our equilibrium model that takes a central place in our approach. So the equilibrium model we've developed will be used to sense, monitor, and proactively optimize our mobility system, taking into account a wide range of socio-technical, environmental, social, and governance factors. This equilibrium model, in particular, will work alongside our KPI framework to convey the right indicators to enable decision makers to monitor the performance of their urban mobility systems and take the right decisions. The AntifragiCity involves 13 partners drawn from 8 countries in Europe. The biggest challenge we had to face was to adhere to a common vision as a consortium, and we feel that we have achieved that thanks to our 2 general assemblies. The first one took place back in May in Thessaloniki, and the following and second one that took place in Bratislava. So another point that is quite interesting is the fact that we are using and we're committed to using a participative approach, and that is reflected in the methods that we are using, in particular during this first year of the project. So just to mention, we've just completed our citizen assemblies within 3 cities, within the city of Bratislava, the city of Thessaloniki, and the city of Larissa. These citizen assemblies were quite enriching in terms of insights. The fact that we have been exposed to the local citizens, we try to understand the issues they face with their mobility system and the way in which we are now going to use this useful insight to shape our interventions in terms of models and solutions is quite interesting. So this is quite an interesting aspect of the Antifragility project and demonstrate our ability to gel as a consortium and collectively address the objectives of the project. We strongly believe that involving citizens is essential in building anti-fragile mobility systems, and there are a number of reasons to that. I think it's important to note that disruptions tend to force trade-offs, and those trade-offs won't work without trust, without citizen trust. For instance, mobility triage can mean prioritizing certain trips, modes, or routes during stress. So it's really important for us to understand what people see as fair, walkable, and legitimate. In that respect, AntifragilCity is committed to using a participatory and co-creative approach, and I did mention citizen assemblies that took place in our 3 cities. So what we're trying to do through these citizen assemblies is to build a social baseline, to improve acceptance, and feed real-time community knowledge into the system so that learning isn't only technical, but it's also social, and more importantly, taking into account citizens' preferences and views. Our demonstration activities in Bratislava, Larissa, Thessaloniki, and Odesa are essential to the work we're doing for a number of reasons. The obvious one is that anti-fragile is not a theoretical concept. It's a concept that we are developing right to cities, but then it's a concept that we need to test and validate. And this is where these cities provide a wonderful testbed to understand the issues faced by the local citizens, then to monitor the various stressors that affect the cities that we are working with, to simulate different scenarios using our environment called SUA that will be delivered in a later stage, to apply different mobility triage options, and more importantly, to measure the outcomes. How did we improve the current status quo or level of equilibrium, thanks to the techniques that we have developed. So it's interesting to note that we're working in different contexts. We're working with a city that is experiencing a conflict, a war, Odesa. We're working also with a hospital in Thessaloniki. And we strongly believe that this collection of experiences and validations that we are carrying out in all these cities will only enhance and make our solutions more robust, more scalable, and also in terms of exploitation, more adaptable by potential adopters in the future. Now that we've established the foundational work for the Antifragility project, the next challenges for us are to translate the requirement we've gathered through a cooperative approach within WP2 into a specification that will feed into the development of the SUMA platform, so the urban simulation platform that we are developing. We have two other challenges, which are, on the one hand, to understand the type of short-term and the other long-term interventions that are required in order to confer an anti-fragile or anti-fragile attributes to our urban system. So these are collectively the threads or work that will be progressing over the next few months. So we strongly believe that AntifragiCity will have long-lasting impacts and effects on European cities. It's essential to note that Antifragility will help cities continuously manage mobility and the stress while accelerating the sustainability agenda and improving safety of road users and citizens in general. So to achieve that, we will help cities, thanks to our equilibrium model, will help cities accurately define their baseline, to be able to detect disruptions as early as feasible, to choose the right response options that are publicly acceptable and just, and improve mobility performance over time. So we strongly believe that Antifragility will contribute to a transport system that is more resilient to future crises, while also staying aligned with climate and quality of life goals.